Welcome. Thank you so much for being here for today's bi-monthly Bridge Culture Club event. We are discussing August Snow today by Stephen Mack Jones, and today's event is hosted by Bridge, Michigan. If you don't know me or this is your first Bridge Culture Club event, my name is Amber DeLind. I'm the Membership and Engagement Director at Bridge, Michigan. I'm also joined today by my colleague, Jackie Garrett, who will be sort of taking care of our technological needs. So if you have any questions about Zoom, please feel free to send her a direct message. She's there making sure that everything's running smoothly. Thank you all so much for joining us today. If you aren't familiar with us, Bridge, Michigan is our state's nonprofit, nonpartisan news source covering issues that matter to you and to your community. You can subscribe for free if you don't already at bridgemi.com. Also, those who are current Bridge Club members, who are people who have donated to Bridge, Michigan sometime in the last year, get a number of benefits, including access to free electronic copies of each Bridge Culture Club selection. So hello to all of the Bridge Culture Club members. It's good to see all of you. You can become a Bridge member today if you're not already by visiting the link we're going to drop in the chat in just a moment. We are so fortunate to be joined today by author and Michigander Stephen Mack Jones. I'll give a full introduction of Steve momentarily, but we are incredibly honored that he was willing to give of his time today to join us for a discussion of his novel, August Snow. A discussion of today's discussion, the schedule for today's discussion goes a bit like this. In just a moment, I'm going to introduce Stephen. I will lead a short discussion about my questions that I had while reading August Snow, and then we want to turn to your questions. So if you have questions about the book, about the genre, about sort of Steve's process for writing, please feel free to drop those in the chat at any time. We do ask that you remain muted throughout today's discussion, but we'll be taking some questions from the audience at the end of today's discussion. We will conclude right by 1 o'clock, so we want to make sure we value your time, and we will end things by 1 p.m. today. As you heard at the beginning, the Zoom voice tell you we are recording today's discussion, and we'll be posting that recording on Bridge's website, bridgemi.com, either later this afternoon or tomorrow. So if you'd like to watch it again, or you know someone who missed it who might enjoy the discussion, you can find the recording there and can send them the link. Without any further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Stephen Mack Jones. Stephen Mack Jones is a published poet, award-winning playwright, and winner of the Kresge Arts and Detroit Literary Fellowship. He was born and raised in Lansing, Michigan. He moved to Detroit upon his graduation from Michigan State University, go Green, and has remained in the Metro Detroit area. He worked in advertising and marketing communications before turning to fiction. Stephen has received many accolades for his August Snow crime thriller series. He has been shortlisted for the Ian Fleming Steel Dagger Award and a finalist for the Seamus Award, as well as the Strand Critics Award. The Nero Wolfe Society awarded August Snow the 2018 Nero Award. In 2018, the International Association of Crime Writers presented Stephen with the prestigious Hammett Prize for literary excellence in the field of crime writing. August Snow was named a 2018 Michigan Notable Book by the Library of Michigan, and he received that honor again in 2022 for Dead of Winter. His fourth book in the August Snow series will be available in just a few short weeks in November 2023. Stephen, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Amber. Really appreciate it. Hi, folks.
It's so great to see so many of you. 72 participants. This is a great event. Thank you all for being here. Stephen, my first question for you, can you tell us just a little bit about yourself and your history as a Michigan resident, and sort of how you chose to write August Snow?
All right. Well, that is probably the most difficult question today, because I really, I just think of myself as, an average, everyday guy. I take the garbage out, I take the recycling out, and then I sit in my overstuffed leather recliner and make stuff up. Other than that, yes, I went to Michigan State University, as did our oldest daughter, who was graduated with a 4.2 average. Now, if you invert those numbers, that's what I was graduated with. I spent 30 plus years in advertising, marketing, communications, trying to sell all of you healthcare benefits that you didn't need, motor oil, which was compared to blood, uh, the blood of your car, and you wouldn't want to cheat on the blood for your car. Um, and software, writing about software. Um, I barely know how smartphones work, but yes, I did write about enterprise software. And essentially, that's me. I've been blessed with being a published author. I've been blessed with a great family and who's been supportive of me. And that's who I am. I'm just a guy who sits in a leather recliner and makes stuff up.
I think we're all pretty grateful that you've decided to make stuff up and write it down because I received, I was telling you in the sort of pre-show, many notes from readers saying how much they enjoyed this novel, how they're looking forward to reading others in the series. So
Thank you.
you mentioned your sort of previous life in advertising and
Right.
marketing. During that time, were you writing on your own just for fun at all? Sort of what was the spark to make you make that switch?
You know, I was writing on my own. I've written for a long time, even with my first job in Detroit, having written a play called Back in the World, which was performed at the Attic Theater. Remember the Attic Theater? Anybody? Yeah. And it went on to off Broadway in New York. And that sounds very impressive, but when I say off Broadway, it was probably a mile and a half from, New Jersey. So that's off Broadway. Um, but I've for a long time written, and even though I am not the biggest fan of having worked in advertising and marketing communications. The one thing, well, I got two things out of it. Uh, a check to feed my family and the ability to edit mercilessly and to rewrite quickly. And those are skills that I am eternally grateful for. Comes in handy when you're dealing with an editor that pretty much says, okay, you're almost a week behind schedule. Where's it at?
Fair enough. Fair enough. So, obviously this group read August Snow. And I'm sure you have done a great deal of additional character development for August throughout the series and plan to keep doing so. But I was just curious, as I was reading, what kind of research you needed to do to develop August's characters and maybe other characters in the book.
Yes. Well, to begin with, as you've noticed in reading the book, August is half African American, half Mexican American. Uh, I don't have any Mexican American or Mexican heritage in my family. So it was The first part of it was uh, learning about Mexican American heritage, history, um, being respectful and curious about a culture that I had not lived. Um, by the way, I am a direct descendant of um, what's his name? Prince, or he was the last king of France, who was beheaded. But anyway, so that was the first part, learning, empathizing about the Mexican American culture and how that culture takes on its own personality in Detroit, in Michigan. Um, that was that was a considerable bit of research. And as you may or may not know, um, I modeled August after the African American culture and the Mexican American culture. And that was intentional because those are two of Detroit's largest minorities who have rarely seen eye to eye. And I wanted to show people that, well, somebody got along between the two of them, if you know what I mean. Um, so there was that research. Also, I, even though my family has a proud history of serving the military in the United States. My brother and I, on our side of the family, were the first uh, not to have served. We registered, obviously, for the Vietnam War, but um, our numbers were never chosen. So I don't have any military background, and um, even less to the point of zero in handling weapons. Um, I personally have never handled a weapon. Um, I'm not the biggest fan of guns, so there was research to do there, and again, setting my personal feelings about weapons aside, learning the mechanics of weaponry and the proper use of weaponry, and what a um, ex-Marine who served in Afghanistan twice would have been familiar with. So there was that research. And also, there was the research of what is the personality of Detroit? Every city has its own distinct personality. Um, you know, and Detroit is among those who have their distinct personality. Uh, you could take someone from Los Angeles and plant them in Midtown Detroit, and they wouldn't have a clue as to what was going on or as to who these people were. So Detroit has its own distinct personality, and I had to research that not only in the history and building of Detroit, but also what were my experiences um, with people, with this city over the 45 plus years that I've been here, and what could I extrapolate from that uh, that was the consummate Detroit personality.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I know that I am personally interested in it, but also I've heard from readers when they submit their questions that it's fascinating to learn about process and sort of how authors are able to sort of develop and weave these really complex characters. So thank you for sharing that.
Oh, absolutely.
Speaking, go ahead. I'm sorry, Steve.
I'd like to think that for as maybe unique as August Snow is, I'd like to think that he exemplifies uh, the Detroit spirit. And it's a spirit that you'll find at the city's core and in the suburbs. We might like to think that there is that demarcation, but there is a Detroit type. And I think that type, as exemplified in August Snow, is um, tough, resilient, um, will knock you down, but also offer you a hand to pick you up. Um, that for me kind of exemplifies the Detroit spirit. We're tough. Um, and I'll give you an example. I'm sorry to go on about this, but
Nothing to be sorry about. This is great.
when I was in advertising, every once in a while I would get sent to New York, Midtown Manhattan, and I would fly into LaGuardia. And, you know, you come out of LaGuardia and there's the lineup of cabs. And every time I got into a cab and the cabbie said, hey, where you in from today? I would say Detroit. And that would be the fastest, cheapest taxi ride I'd ever had because they didn't want any trouble. New Yorkers like to think that they're tough. But if you just get in a taxi or an Uber in New York and say, yeah, I'm from Detroit, I kid you not, your ride is going to be safe, it's going to be smooth, it's going to be fast, and there will be no talking. So, you know, whether you're from Grosse Pointe or Garden City, when you get to New York, tell the cabbie, yeah, I'm from Detroit.
You heard it here first, folks.
Boom.
That's awesome. My next question is actually about Detroit and setting the August Snow series there. So one of the things that I loved most about reading August Snow is that, you know, a crime novel set in Detroit could pretty easily veer into stereotypes, simplistic narratives about the city.
Certainly.
I just felt like at every turn, you just told a more nuanced story about the city's challenges as well as its successes than you see a lot of times in entertainment. And I just was curious about, was this a goal? How did you do it?
Well, I am very familiar with the stereotype of Detroit. And it's a stereotype that's persisted for decades, and you've seen it in movies, and you've read it in books, and you've seen it on TV. That this is a dark, grim um, place where people walk around with their fists up. Um, cut to a scene of sparks flying on an automotive assembly line. Cut to what's now referred to as ruin porn, the ruins of the city. And I had seen some of that when I first moved here. But I think the city has gone through an extraordinary change in the past 15, 20 years. Um, it has become, it's renewing itself. Uh, I moved here when it was referred to as the Renaissance City. And frankly, there was nothing Renaissance about it. Um, but in the past 15 to 20 years, um, 3, 4 star restaurants have been popping up. The demographics of the city has changed. Businesses have found both an um, advantage and uh, well, they've just found an advantage to doing business downtown Detroit. Uh, and I would like people, readers, to know that. I don't want to lecture anyone, but I do want to say, hey, whatever you thought, think again, please. Um, we are, within the next 5 to 10 years, we are going to be a world leader in electric vehicles. People will come here to do business. We have become a leading area for IT development. And medicine. I mean, my goodness, look at the universities we have around us. Wayne State, U of M, Michigan State, Central, um, Northern Michigan. Um, it is, it's an amazing place with a incredibly diverse workforce. And also the fact that this is the place to create art. It used to be New York or LA. To some extent, it still is LA for film, for acting. But the poet musician Patti Smith said this maybe 5 years ago in a magazine interview. She said, she said, I really wish young people would stop coming to New York. New York will chew them up and spit them out. It will destroy their dreams. These young people need to find a new city like Detroit that supports its artists. And with places like the Library of Michigan and the Kresge Foundation, that is exceedingly true. So the basic question is, do I like telling people these things? I really do. And the result of it was with the first book, I got my first fan letter from Australia. And I hate using the term fan because I never thought of myself as somebody with fans. You know, I'm not Justin Timberlake. Um, but I got a letter uh, from a gentleman in Australia. And the gentleman ended his letter, he talked very nicely about the book, but he ended um, by saying, Detroit's on my bucket list now, mate. And that made me feel really good. This is a place well worth exploring. So yeah, sorry, long-winded.
No, that's very cool. Wow, that's what you want to hear, right? That you
Yes,
know it's the proof that you did what you set out to do, which was to show sort of what the beyond the stereotypes and the sort of national narrative of what the city's about.
right.
I was curious about the second location in Traverse City kind of gave the a reader a sense of understanding kind of more of the state. That geographically, it's a really different place in different parts of the state. Was that
Yeah.
was it fun to be able to write about sort of the state outside of sort of metropolitan areas?
It was so much fun. And I don't know as I consciously chose Traverse City, but um, it's one of the cities in Michigan that I've thoroughly enjoyed. And it's beautiful. Um, it's gotten a little pricey, but Traverse City, Port Huron, there's so much geographical diversity to Michigan. Um, and I like that, and I'm proud of it. Um, I've been to a number of places in my oh, nearly 70 years, but Michigan is just beautiful. I'm looking out at the trees turning right now. That's beautiful. Winter, yeah, that's a tough one. But that's what makes us Michiganders, right? Am I right on that? We're tough.
That's exactly right. Thank you. Um, one of the this actually aligns with one of the questions that I just saw in the chat. One of the kind of the coolest parts or aspects of the book for me was sort of seeing August rebuild his own personal community and really the sort of building pride on his street and building a neighborhood on his street, sort of house by house. Is that sort of an important part of August's character arc throughout the series, and sort of how did you want to build that in for him?
Well, I'm going to say something that may be a bit surprising, considering that there's violence and language in the book. But quite honestly, the book is, and in fact, all four of the books are love letters to my parents, the way I was raised. My father was blue collar labor at Oldsmobile in Lansing for uh, 38 years. He never finished high school, but he always had a book in his hand when he was at home. Studs Terkel, um, uh, Edgar Rice Burroughs, everything. He could even quote Shakespeare. My mother, she has, she did have a beautiful operatic voice, and Sundays was culture day. Uh, my dad ran the house, but Sunday was her day. Um, to teach my brother and I about um, opera, about classical music. She would physically sit us down in front of the TV to watch Leonard Bernstein's Young People's Concert. Um, so, in many ways, these books are love letters to my parents because um, even though August has been through some terrible times, two tours in Afghanistan, um, the police force as a detective, being ousted from the police force, he could very easily become bitter and reclusive. And in fact, that's the way he wants it to be. He wants to be a reclusive. That way, no one can hurt you. But he still has that true north compass in his heart, in his soul, instilled by his parents. Um, And you may have picked that up, you may not have picked that up, but um, again, in an odd way, they are love letters to my father, God rest his soul, and my mother, who will turn 98 this year.
That's beautiful. I love that. It was really, those are some of my favorite aspects is when he's talking about, you know, his memories of his parents and what their values, how they shaped him. So that's really neat to know that that's sort of a personal thing too. One of the things that I was curious about, because as reading the first book of what became a series, did you always know this was going to be a series? Did you have it kind of mapped out, or did that come about later?
But, God bless you for that question, but I'm laughing because um, I wrote the first book, and this is really shortening a lengthy story. I wrote the first book, and my agent sold it to Soho. And when that happened, after years of trying, I thought, I've got a publisher, I've got a first book out, I can die now. That's that's all I've ever wanted. So what happened was the first book came out and it surprised my publisher. And I found this out through various and sundry means. It surprised my publisher because my publisher, who's absolutely wonderful, um, they consider it a good break-even day if they sell 5,000 copies of a new book by a new writer. It's a good day. Well, they found out that August Snow had sold upwards of 20,000 copies in the first 2 months, 2.5 months, and it shocked them. And as a result of that shock, I started getting calls from my publisher. And the calls were something like, you know, hey, Steve, how you doing? Yeah, we're just calling to see how you're doing. Yeah. All right, well, that's good, good. Hey, listen, I wanted to ask you, how are you doing on the second book? I hadn't started a second book. I I had no idea for a second book. So of course, my reply was, yeah, it's going well. Yeah, I really like this first draft. When can you see something? Oh, probably 4 months, 5 months. Okay, bye-bye. Honey, I gotta go to work. And that's really how the second book came about. Um, like I said, with the first book, I could have died happy. Um, but it was actually their call that prompted me to start the second book.
That's amazing. That's so cool. And do you think that it was just, I mean, there's no way to know, I guess, exactly, but because you were a new author, they just didn't anticipate sort of the success of the first one. It took them by surprise.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
And believe it or not, I think that happens quite a bit in publishing. Um, how do I describe publishing? It's part business, but it's mostly Hogwarts magic. Um, no one exactly knows how things get done in publishing. You can talk to 5 different people who've been in the business for 10, 15, 20 years and get 5 different answers as to how the business works. Um, so yeah, it's some of it is business, some of it is kismet.
Fair enough. That's fascinating. It seems to me, as I was reading, that at least the first story would lend itself well to the screen. Has there been any talks about developing any of the August Snow stories into TV or a movie?
I'm sorry. Yes. And there's a story there too.
Oh, I want to hear it.
Um, about 6 months after the book was published, I got a call from my agent, wonderful lady, Stephanie. And she said, Steve, and at the time I was a stay-at-home husband. My wife was still working. I was taking care of our young son. Um, so I had most of the day to myself. And wow, how boring that was. But I got a call from Stephanie and she said, Steve, are you free next Tuesday to speak with this producer? And she mentioned who the producer was. And I told Stephanie, oh, gee, let me look at my schedule to see if I'm free that Tuesday. Because I might be separating the recycling or cooking. I'll see if I have time for this guy. And it was, well, of course I have the time. Next Tuesday, 2 o'clock. And I had seen everything this producer had done, TV, movies, everything. Tuesday comes, and I'm sitting at our dining room table, um, feeling like I'm having an out of body experience because I'm talking to this big time Hollywood producer. And we had a great chat the first time. He said, okay, we'll talk again in a week. And it was unbelievable to me because it was the first talk was like he was trying to convince me of how good he was. And I was like, yeah, well, I know that. So we talked again the next week, and we agreed that by our third talk, I would have a decision for him. He said, we'll talk in 2 weeks. I'll give you some time to think about it. Well, 2 weeks went by. A month went by. A month and a half went by. And you know what? I never heard from Harvey Weinstein again. Yeah, it was Harvey Weinstein.
Are you serious?
Yes,
Oh
I'm
my
I'm
goodness.
very serious.
Oh my goodness.
And apparently what kept him from making that third call was prison.
Yep, that'll do it. That will
Yeah,
do it.
yeah. Uh,
I hope that if it's something you're interested in, that you'll get another call from someone who is not in our judicial system.
it's an ongoing process.
Mhm.
And after a brief year stop in the process, it's picking up again. So, more proof that I'm from Michigan. Also, I'll believe it when I see it. In the meantime, I've got an overstuffed leather chair and I can still make crap up.
Well, then that's all we need, right? I just have maybe another question of mine, and then I'd love to turn to some of our reader questions. There have been some great
Oh,
ones
of
in the
course.
chat.
Of
Uh,
course.
I saw that, the fourth book in the August Snow series is being released in about 2 weeks. Tell us what we need to know about it and how to get it, and anything else you might be working on that you'd like us to know about.
All right. Well, the fourth book in the series, and I try to write the books so that they're independent of each other. Someone can jump into the third book and know what's going on, have a sense of who's who. And I try to make all of the books like that. This fourth book, I have I have teased around the house that this book may be the one that gets me excommunicated from the Catholic Church. And the reason for that is anyone who's read is familiar with one of the characters, Father Grabowski, who's been a longtime family friend of both August Snow's family and Mexican Town. And he was part of the Franciscans who preached and took care of St. Aloysius downtown, as they did for a number of years. Well, in this fourth book, someone has framed the recently retired Father Grabowski for child abuse during his years at the church. And August doesn't believe it. Well, let's put it this way. He doesn't want to believe it. And now that Father Grabowski is living with another character, Jimmy Radman, August feels it's necessary to find out what the truth is to fight these allegations. And unfortunately, he has to find out rather quickly because there is an organization of priests out of Rome called Deus Ex. And they were a splinter group of the Knights Templar. And they've appeared off and on throughout the past 250 years. And this organization of priests have forsaken their own souls for the protection of the church on earth. And that means any priest who has gone wrong that can do harm to the church, it is their job to find that priest and, how shall I say, dispense with him. Unfortunately, someone has leveled these charges at Father Grabowski, and they are after him. So it becomes a tug of war between Father Grabowski, August Snow, the Diocese of Detroit, and the Deus Ex organization. And there's a mysterious priest in from the Vatican who is an ex-combat veteran, former policeman like August Snow, who works security for the Vatican. And he is in the middle of it. And August does not know whether to trust him or not. So it's it's a question that I've always tussled with myself. The difference between religion and faith. Sometimes those two things converge. Um, More than not, they butt heads. And August has to determine his allegiance to the church or his allegiance to the faith that he was brought up with. So that's kind of a convoluted way of saying um, what's going on with this book.
Sounds like it. I imagine there are many of us who are headed to pre-order. So it sounds great. Sounds great.
Thank you.
Do you think that the crime and thriller genre is where you'll stay? Is or do you see yourself writing in other areas?
Uh, right now, I've got two projects going, neither of which is, well, one of which is not a thriller, and the other is not August Snow. But quite frankly, I enjoy the thriller genre, um, the crime genre, and people have enjoyed the crime genre for hundreds of years. I mean, tell me Macbeth isn't, a crime story. Uh, Tell me that Hamlet isn't a crime story. Um, some of our most revered writers throughout the world and throughout time have used crime to discuss issues of the day. And I find it uh, a wonderful way of telling a story, but also uh, telling the murky truths of the day. So yeah, I like it.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of us do too. So thank you.
Oh,
I'm
of
going to turn
course.
now to a couple of our reader questions. There were a few, and I want to get to as many as we can. I know this came in from a few readers. It was also one I was curious about because I'm a big Elmore Leonard fan. I think that a lot of times your writing might remind some of us of Elmore Leonard. What do you like to read? Do you have any authors you'd recommend to us?
Well, that is a tall order. I like anything written by an author named Rachel Housel Hall. She's a wonderful crime writer. Also, a lady named Wendell Thomas, um, who is just hilarious. I promise you, you'll fall out of your chair. She writes a great crime mystery, but her main character is a travel agent named Sid Redondo. And she has a $1,500 purse that she takes with her everywhere, whether it's the jungles of Peru or Bali. And I don't know how she does it, but in this um, Bella, I forgot the name of the style of purse, but it's got to be $1,500. She can do anything. She can patch up a wound, um, and also offer the person Altoid mints. So I like her. Uh, Jimmy Ben, James Ben. He writes a World War II series, and his latest is the 19th book in the series. And I guarantee you, James been with every book, 19 books in the series, every one of those books is fresh, it's exciting, and it tells the history of it tells secret histories of World War II, things that you would otherwise not know. So there are a number of great authors. Of course, I will always read anything written by Ace Atkins. Um, oh, Mike Lupica. Um, yeah, there's just a wonderful um, array of authors out there.
Definitely. One reader wanted to know, all of the restaurants the characters visit make us want to go to those restaurants. Are they real? Or did you rename them, or are they kind of combinations of places you've been that you like?
Uh, Another story. I got a letter from a lady who, her and her girlfriends decided to take the August Snow tour of restaurants. And she and her girlfriends spent a day going from Mexican Town to this, that, and the other. And she said, the only one we couldn't find is Schmear's Deli. Where is that? Well, I hate to tell you this, but Schmear's Deli is the only restaurant that I've mentioned that I made up whole cloth. And that's because I could not decide on which deli was the best. Um, and goodness knows if you saw my gut, you'd know that I've been to a few delis in my time. So yeah, Schmear's is the only one that I've made up. Um, the others are there for your dining pleasure.
Fantastic. Uh, how did you get to know Southwest Detroit and Mexican Town? Did you spend a lot of time just in the neighborhood, or how was it that you did your research
A lot of eating. I didn't
there?
know it then, honestly, that I was doing research, but I've eaten at, I think I can safely say I've eaten at every uh, Mexican restaurant in Mexican Town and have patronized a couple of the bakeries down there. Um, I love Mexican food. Um, Wait a minute. I need to amend that. I love food. There, we'll just leave it at that. But even a restaurant called El Barzon. Has anyone heard of El Barzon? Yes. That's the weirdest Mexican restaurant I've ever been to. Because you can get high cuisine Mexican food and Italian. Um, and over the last time I was there, over the cook station, there was a Vietnam flag and a Marine flag. It was a lot to take in.
For sure, but it works somehow.
Yes.
One of our participants today wanted to know, if ever August Snow ends up on the big or small screen, who would you, in your ideal world, who would play him?
Ah, I went through this for about 3 years, and one of my Imaginary Picks actually signed on to executive produce the TV series. I won't say who it was, but he signed on to executive produce, and I started having second thoughts because this actor's background is comedic. And I started wondering if there are comedic moments, but there's also certain gravitas. Well, CBS and ABC were excited about his inclusion. And then last year, they asked him, well, we're ready to shoot this fall, which would have been last fall. What's your availability? And he was booked 2 years out. And so ABC and CBS said, sorry, we can't wait that long. We're going to drop the process and go with something else. And this actor's from Michigan. And I won't mention his name because he let me down, man. I think it would just be good to have someone unknown, an unknown actor, somebody who's got the talent and maybe the history, but you don't quite remember their name. But I'll leave that up to the pros in Hollywood.
Absolutely. I hope we'll all get a chance to see that. So, but I am looking at the clock. I know we are almost right at 1 o'clock. Steve, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us today.
And I can't thank you enough. This has just been wonderful. I would also like to say I love and trust implicitly the reportage from Bridge. Um, it's a wonderful organization. And in in a day and age where you're not quite sure who to trust anymore as far as reportage, Bridge does the job. So I thank you.
Thank you so much, Steve. And thank you to all of you who participated today. This has been a great event. It's a really great one to end sort of our 2023 Culture Club series on. So this was our last Culture Club event of 2023. We will be resuming in 2024. So if you've got ideas of books or films or podcasts or any sort of media that is Michigan focused that you think we might consider for a future Culture Club event, please email me. I'll drop my email in the chat, but it's membership@bridgemi.com. As you heard at the beginning of this conversation, we were recording, so we will take this recording and post it on our website either later today or early tomorrow, so you can watch again if you'd like. We are looking forward to resuming this series in 2024. And just a reminder that you'll be eligible to receive our next Culture Club selection if you are a Bridge Club member. So consider becoming a Bridge Club member today if you're not already. Thank you so much once again. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your afternoon. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you all soon. Take care.
Thank you, folks. Support your local library.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.